Hi again, everyone, and we're getting ready for Georgia and Kentucky this week. The train just keeps on rolling for the Bulldogs. Number one ranked, went through Starkville, Mississippi last week, beat the other Bulldogs. This week we head to Lexington, Kentucky to take on the Wildcats, who started off the season kind of like a house of fire, but that fire's been doused a little bit. They've had a lot of injuries, and they've run into a tough part of the schedule and lost to Vanderbilt last week, and Vanderbilt ended their long SEC losing streak, 26 games. They hadn't won a conference game since 2019. They won in Lexington last week. So the Cats are a little wounded. DJ Shockley, Eric Zier, would you guys agree with that? Kentucky's, I mean, they're hurting right now. Not that they're wounded animal backed into the corner, they're going to be dangerous and all of that, but they are wounded. And the last half of the season doesn't look like their first half of the season.
Yeah, it's a tale of two teams right now. This Kentucky team was considered coming in one of the contenders for the Eastern Crown that obviously has been wrapped up by our own Georgia Bulldogs here as of last week. But Kentucky is reeling right now. You know, it's I chuckle a little bit. You say they're getting into the tough part of the schedule. I don't think anybody would have said Vandy is going to be the top part of the schedule coming in before the year. But it is. Listen, it's a wounded football team. The dogs are rolling right now. All of that, though, you've got to put kind of behind you. And you know that every time that you go on the road in the SEC, I don't care who you're playing, just ask Kentucky, right? That when you're playing in the SEC, anybody can beat you at any given time. But there's no doubt when you look at this Kentucky team, they look much different today than they did at the start of the season when really they were making their way up in the national rankings. They were considered a contender in the East. Today, they are a far cry from that, but still a dangerous team. They still have weapons that can go out and beat you. It's never easy playing in Lexington. And as you go on the road, you better be ready to go play. But this Georgia football team right now is executing at a very high clip. Still some things to clean up, but a team in Georgia that should be licking its chops a little bit.
Scott, I know you mentioned how hot our dogs are. Obviously, going on the road last week at Mississippi State, it was very cold. We didn't bring the warmth. I'm wondering if we could possibly bring any more warmth this weekend as we head to a chilly Lexington, Kentucky. I know Z's going to have his heater in the booth, so I was just wondering if we can get that down on the side. But no, yeah, Z, I mean, you're spot on with what's happened this year with Kentucky is, they got into the latter part of the season. Obviously, losing their quarterback, Will Levis, for a game was, not ideal for them. They haven't had their top running back for, 3 or 4 games and Rodriguez throughout the season. So it's been a tough sledding for guys that they've been depending on to be good. I know Levis played last week and lost to Vandy, but it's been one of those type of years as the bottom half of the season has been really tough on them. They just haven't looked like the team that everybody thought. And obviously, Coach Stoops is a really good coach. He's done a good job of their program over the years. They've always been a tough physical opponent each and every year. I'm sure on Saturday will be the same thing. But they are absolutely reeling, and you just wonder what kind of team is going to show up on Saturday after the loss from last week. Is it a team that's going to say, we got the number one team in the country coming in, we want to spoil some for them, or will it be a team that say, hey, we just lost to Vanderbilt and we're going to lay down and, try to get through this season? So I don't think it matters for our dogs. I think whatever team shows up, they will be ready and prepared to play. And that's one thing that you like about Kirby's team is regardless of what the other team has done in the past, they always show up and play to the standard that they're used to. So I expect the same thing this weekend, regardless of what Kentucky looks or feels like coming into this game.
You guys mentioned there's still things to clean up for Georgia, and certainly top of the list is turnovers. We had more turnovers at Mississippi State, but the upside to that is they haven't seemed to affect Georgia too much. How has this team overcome those mistakes and still come out on top the way they have?
Scott, that's a good call, man, because usually, we've had a couple games this year where we lost the turnover battle and still end up winning the ball game. And I think that's you got to give a lot of credit to Kirby and his staff telling the guys, you got to be able to fight through it. You got to be able to still overcome that kind of stuff. And when you have really good players and they have a good mental makeup, I think is the best way to say it, they find a way to overcome those obstacles. And then even on the offensive side of the ball, when you do turn it over, you have guys who can move on to the next play. And obviously, we're talking about our quarterback who threw 2 interceptions last week. And I think you can easily say, hey, last week he got his arm hit one time, that was an interception. And the other time, the defensive lineman just made a really good play. So it's instances in a game where sometimes you can't do anything about it. It just happens that way. But then other times where, we've had guys just strip the ball from us and the ball comes out and, teams are able to get the football. So we absolutely have to take care of the football because we don't want for that issue to come up later in the season when we're in a really big game and it changed the scope of what happens in that game. We've been able to overcome that through the regular season, but I don't want that to be a habit that we have to continue to do because ultimately, as we all know in this game, it'll catch up to you. So you got to find ways to be taking care of the football, but also give a lot of credit to the defense as well, where they've had a lot of sudden change moments this season where they had to go back onto the field quickly, or they had to hold a team to a field goal. That's what it's all about. That's what team ball is all about, picking up the other side of the ball when something happens. I think our defense and our team has done a really good job of that when being thrown in those situations.
Well, Shock, you're spot on when you talk about the defense, right? How do you overcome losing the turnover battle? You overcome that because you've got a dominant defense that is always, they're playing in the moment, not looking ahead, not worried about what happens. They know when they go out there and step on the field, they've got a job to do, and they've done a great job of being mentally prepared and ready to go execute regardless of what the situation is, because offensively we have put our defense into some tough spots. I mean, you go back to the Tennessee game, first drive of the game, we turn it over, and there was so much hype and so much emotion around that game. The fact that Tennessee only gets 3 points out of that exchange, that's a win for Georgia. That builds confidence for Georgia. So our defense and the level at which they're playing has done a remarkable job of really bailing us out. And Shock, I think to your other point, it's something that we have to get fixed though, because at some point in time, when you look at who loses the turnover battle, overwhelmingly, right, that team loses football games. The fact that we've been able to go battle through, especially, we at one point in the season, I think, Scott, we were +6 in turnover battle, and we've seen that completely flip and turn around the other way here in the second portion of this season. The fact that that hasn't caught up to us is pretty remarkable. It's a testament to the way the defense is playing. It is a testament to the offense, kind of like that next man up mentality. It's that next play mentality, not to lose confidence. At some point in time, when you play elite competition and you lose a turnover battle, at some point it catches up to you, right? What we don't want to have is that catching up to us when we get into the SEC championship game, or when we're in the college football playoff, if things continue to progress the way that we hope and expect them to progress. At some point in time against elite competition, that catches up to you. So it's something that we've got to get under control and reverse that trend right now. We've talked about it every week for the past 3 or 4 weeks. It continues to be that one thing that comes up and grabs us. Outside of that, you look at the way we're executing on both sides of the ball, you love what you see. It's that one area that we need to clean up, because it's one area that can cost you in the biggest of games.
Scott, I know Z is really looking forward to you telling us, when the Dogs in a game have a turnover and lose a turnover battle, the record. I know he looks forward to those stats throughout the ball game too.
You can bring that stat up. You can bring that stat up if it's for us, right? And it goes the wrong way. But where you can't is when we get a turnover, right? When we have a pick six, we win 31 out of 32 football
Can't
games.
use that one.
You can't bring that up on air, Scott. You can't.
We got a lot of streaks to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about them right now.
Thank you very much. We'll talk about them off air.
One thing that Kentucky's having issues with is Will Levis has been injured a little bit, and he's playing hurt. He's got a toe injury that's, from what I understand, is pretty painful, and he's had a little shoulder problem. So he's banged up, but he's fighting through it. The downside of that for them is that he's not very mobile. I think I saw they've given up 39 sacks this year already. Does that mean Georgia just brings the house time and time again? We've seen Georgia be effective the last few games with some good defensive pressure. Is that how you guys would approach this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we need to necessarily bring pressure. Our front four is playing at such a high level, especially number 88. I
Mm.
mean, Jalen Carter is a full-grown man out there on the football field. He's a one-man wrecking crew. So I don't know. I'm not sure if in this game we necessarily need to bring pressure. I think as you dive into the tape, right, defensively, we're going to put together a scheme where we see that they've got vulnerability, like we have done all year long. But the propensity for this Georgia defense this year is to be and play it pretty close to the vest, be pretty vanilla. The only team that we have really seen Georgia open up the defensive playbook is against Tennessee, where we brought a variety of different looks. Outside of that, it's been we're going to line up and cover two. We may bring one linebacker or one defensive back, so rush five as opposed to rushing four. But bringing a multitude of guys where we're bringing 6 on a play or 7 on a play and just pinning our ears back and coming. The Dogs haven't had to go do that, and they've been able to dominate just with the 4 down linemen. So I think that Georgia today is looking at it saying we're good enough rushing just 4 and protecting the back end of the defense with zone looks, and we still can go get pressure on anybody that we play. So a lot of that's going to be as we get through the week and build out a game plan specifically for what Kentucky is doing. That'll determine what scheme we go in with. But if you look at the body of work for this Georgia defense right now, it has been we're good enough to be very vanilla, keep it simple, let our guys play fast, and with those 4 down linemen, we're going to be able to apply the pressure that we need to wreak havoc.
Scott, one thing that when I started looking to this ball game that I thought was surprising is Kentucky has the 13th ranked rushing offense in the SEC. And that's something that you're not used to hearing from Kentucky because they're always have a really good offensive line. They always are physical. They always want to ground and pound and mush and, just be the more physical team up front. So to see that they're the 13th ranked rush offense in the SEC tells you they're struggling running the football. And they now, when they try to throw the football, well, here comes all the sacks. Here comes all the issues they're having because they're more than likely they're going to be in third long and a lot in this game. And I think Z's talking about our front and how good they are. This is one of those type of games where you feel like you can get home. We've done a good job of stopping the run, and now we're doing a good job of, like Z mentioned, getting home with just 4. You can play coverage. So when you play coverage, guess what? They got to hold on to the football. And with all the issues that Levis is having, of course, he's going to play like nothing's wrong, but he's going to want to hold on to it a little bit longer. He's going to be less susceptible to get outside and run as much as he used to with that toe and the shoulder. I've had a toe injury. It is not fun, and especially when it's 32 degrees outside, it's definitely not fun. So I expect Georgia to be able to get home a couple times this week, especially without even having to bring pressure. But as we know, Coach Schumann and Muschamp and Kirby, they're going to bring some pressure. They're going to force the issue with Levis to see what he can do and what his offensive line is about. And I think that's when we'll be able to get home and, create more turnovers or even create more sacks in this game.
What's clicking for our offense right now? Did you guys pick up on anything last week that maybe needs to be addressed, or is the offense still moving pretty fluidly?
The one thing I thought was very interesting and I thought was a sign of good things to come was some other guys making plays. How about the big 2 catches that Kieras had last week? Talking about 50-50 ball. The one down the sideline was a big-time catch by him. The one down the middle of the field, knowing he's probably going to take a shot, comes down with it. I thought Ladd, came out of a little funk that he's had throughout the year and had a really big ball game. So I'm talking about some of the other guys making plays, and it's still been, the last 2 weeks hasn't been a huge showing by our tight end. So we've had other guys that have stepped up and made big-time plays, which is very encouraging. So I'm excited to see us have that distribution. So now when you get into the latter part of the season, each guy knows there's a chance for him to make a play if the ball comes to him, and they've done it in a big-time game or done it in a big-time atmosphere. So I'm still excited about the fact that, Stetson's not locked in on one guy or, he's just looking for one particular, concept. He's starting to find other guys that can make plays for him, and guys are actually making them, especially on those 50-50 balls down the field. And then, the offensive line, you can tell they're still excited about being able to run the football. We talked about it at the end of the game last week, how excited they were to say, all right, 5 minutes left in the game, let's go try to end it. And then you got Kendall Milton who puts the dagger in Mississippi State with a big time run. That's what it's all about. being able to finish games when you need to, but also having multiple guys who can do it.
Shock, the reason that's so important, having some of these other guys that you just mentioned step up, is Georgia presents so many problems with our tight ends, with Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington. We present issues with Kenny McIntosh coming out of the backfield and his ability and that threat that he has to catch the football out of the backfield. It's opened up, and it will continue to open up because of what you have to do to contain, right, those All-American candidates that we've got, or All-Americans, and Darnell and Brock. You're going to have one-on-one situations on the perimeter, which is going to open up opportunities for explosive plays. You go back 3-4 games ago, it was one of the areas, along with turning the football over, that we needed to see better execution in. Well, all of a sudden, we're starting to see that. Kearis Jackson stepping up, Ladd McConkey stepping up, right? We've got guys that are stepping up and making plays when they get into those one-on-one situations. And those opportunities are going to continue, because you cannot ignore the tight end room that Georgia has. It's the best maybe that I've ever seen in college football. So you've got to pay attention to that. And now when you start executing those explosives and you get other guys involved in this offense, man, you become very, very difficult to stop. So it's love what we're doing offensively. I love how we're using tempo. We got into a period of time last game that we were as fast as I have ever seen us. It was, I almost packed my bags up and went home, because there was no way I was getting a word in. I was going to go down. If it weren't so cold, I would have gone and sat with Shock, and we would have talked amongst ourselves. That's how fast we were going. So you love what we're doing offensively right now. Outside of turning the football over, we clean that piece up. Man, I don't know how I would design a defense to slow this Georgia offense down.
Last thing I got for you guys today. You practice in the heat all summer long. You try to acclimate yourself to that heat, to that sweat, to that humidity. And now here we go. You can't really get ready for 30-degree temperatures, 20-degree temperatures. You can't prep for that. How does the cold affect this Georgia team? How does it affect the ball? How does it affect, what we want to do offensively and in kicking game?
So I think, one, it's cold here right now. So the dogs are out practicing in the cold. So they're getting acclimated to the extent that they can. It's not going to be as cold as it's going to be in Kentucky. When I played the cold, because you're out running around, and you're going to warm up pretty quickly, right? If you're coming in off the bench, that becomes very, very difficult to do. But if you're out playing and you're out running around, the temperatures that we're going to be talking about and dealing with, really not a factor. I do think dealing with the football, if you're a quarterback and if you're a receiver and you're a running back, anybody that's handling the ball, when the football gets cold, it gets hard, it gets slippery. You've got to really pay attention to ball security in weather like this, because that is a big difference. But I don't think the weather that we're talking about is going to bother the three of us because we're not running around and we're just sitting in the cold. If you're out there running around, for the big offensive lineman and defensive lineman, they love this. They would rather it be cooler versus being 100 degrees in the middle of August. So this is their kind of weather. And if you're a running back or a receiver and you're running around outside of ball security, a little bit more focus there, I think our guys are going to be able to handle it just fine.
Zeno, it's interesting. You mentioned the ball security part of it. And I learned this last week is, I don't know if this just is a Georgia thing or what, but they don't allow anybody who touches the football to wear sleeves, because they feel that's a ball security issue, especially in that kind of weather. So they kind of force the issue with the guys of, all right, no sleeves, so you got to deal with it, and it's just about the game. You can't have any other excuses for if you fumble or whatever it is. You got to go out and you got to just handle the weather. Guys, last week they had tons of heaters down there. Guys were all around most of the game if they weren't on the field. And like Zeke mentioned, coming off the bench, that makes it tough. But while you're out there, trust me, you're locked in, you're focused, because you got a job to do. You got so many things going on in your head that it doesn't really allow you to be cold. And I've been a part of games like that where, when you first walk out, you're like, man, it's so cold out here. But once you walk onto those white lines and you start thinking about this 350-pound guy that's trying to take your head off, you don't really worry about the cold. You worry about your assignment. You worry about what you got to do. So I think while you're on the field, you're fine. The guys just got to do a good job of staying warm while they're on the sideline.
Well, I think Georgia has done a terrific job of blocking out the elements. That's always the message. Anytime, any place, anywhere, I think was the message last week. It sounded like. So hopefully this is as Eric pointed out, it's more of a us problem than it is a team problem with that temperature. But it's Georgia and Kentucky, 3:30 Saturday afternoon in Lexington. This is the SEC regular season finale. Georgia's already wrapped up the East, and they look to put a nice little cherry on top with another unblemished regular season. So let's hope they can do that on Saturday afternoon. We'll join you at 11:30 for our broadcast here on the Bulldog Sports Network, and then these guys will be on the play-by-play call with me at 3:30. So we hope to see you then. And Georgia and Kentucky, go Dogs!
Go Dogs!
Dogs.